Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm Rabbi Fred Reeves, and I am the rabbi here at KAM Isaiah Israel. And I want to welcome you to the oldest congregation west of Ohio. This congregation was founded in 1847 as KAM, as Keilat Anshe Ma'arav, the congregation of the people of the West. You know, in 1847, Chicago was pretty far west. And one of the things that I have been working on since arriving here a few years ago is redefining what we mean when we say that we are the congregation of the West. Because we are not as far west as you can get. What are you going to do? You know, Colorado, California. You could even go further west, Hawaii. If you keep going west, you'll actually get east if you go far enough. But I have worked on developing the idea that rather we are the people of a spiritual West. That idea in 1847 of the West being the place for pioneers of going out, making a new life, creating new structures. These are things that we can still do today, but we do it as people of spirit. And so we are on a quest for our spiritual West. And core to that spiritual West quest is the idea of social justice. This congregation, as you all know, if this is your first time, welcome to the South Side. If it's not your first time, you will still have noticed we are on the South Side of Chicago. It was very important in the 1950s and 60s for the rabbis both of KAM and of Isaiah Israel that we stay on the South Side of Chicago. So we have South Side pride here at KAM Isaiah Israel. Now, I am honored to have been asked by the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs to host this gathering, and I want to thank Danny Kaplan and Marla Bramble for all of their hard work in organizing this event. And I want to thank the entire coalition for all of their work through these past 5 years that has led up to this day. And I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for coming here. I was standing outside a few moments ago, and I have to tell you, you could have done something else on a November 1st day that looked like this, and so thank you for being here today. Now, there are a number of Jewish values which might be motivating us to be here and to be involved in the campaign to bring a Level 1 Adult Trauma Center to the South Side of Chicago. We might be motivated by the idea that we cannot stand idly by while our neighbor bleeds. We might be motivated by the obligation to heal the sick and injured, which our tradition identifies. We might be motivated by the teaching of loving both our neighbor and also the stranger as ourselves. Another important Jewish value that we have is the value of discussion, particularly respectful discussion. Our agenda this afternoon, I have to tell you, is quite full. And so the full discussion that we would all enjoy having, we're going to have to delay that discussion until after the official portion of our program. And also, since it is so full, it means that there are a diverse range of people and points of views that are going to be presented here this afternoon. Some of them we will agree with. Some of them maybe we'll agree less with. But I know that as we have gathered here in a Jewish context, we will all of us keep in mind the teaching that all of humanity is created in the divine image, and so therefore all people deserve our respect, even when those other people are wrong. So without further ado, I want to welcome Rabbi David Wolkenfeld, the Rabbi of Anshe Shalom B'nai Israel, onto our bima, who is going to begin us off with a few words of blessing.
Good afternoon. I work at an Orthodox shul. I don't usually get to have a microphone. Rofei kol basar, healer of all flesh, your Torah teaches, Rapo Yerapeh, that those who are injured need medical care, and providing that medical care is a basic obligation in response to any injury. In your Torah, you furthermore singled out the ger, yatom v'almanah, for special protections that those who may be disadvantaged among people because of their race, class, or gender would be privileged in your law and in our hearts. May the one who blessed our ancestors Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, bless the sick and injured of this city. In your mercy, may their each and every limb and sinew be preserved intact. May the Holy Blessed One, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, also heal our city itself. May the arteries and ligaments that connect the neighborhoods and communities of this city be repaired and restored, renewed and reinvigorated. Hashta bagala bizman kariv, now and immediately, and let us say, Amen.
This time I want to welcome to the podium Judy Levy, who is the Executive Director of the JCUA. I kind of feel like you don't need a lot of intros.
Yeah. Welcome to this momentous gathering, JCUA's community meeting for trauma care. We were so excited to see the RSVPs continue to grow over the past few weeks. And look at where we are today. I'm just totally blown away that you're all here with us today. Thank you to Rabbi Reeves, Joe Slade, and KM Isaiah Israel for hosting us. They've been tremendous partners in the planning effort for this event. To the more than a dozen rabbis, Trauma Care Coalition partners, JCUA J-Corps members, the L'Chaim planning team, and special guests who have come from all over Chicago and the suburbs to be with us today, we thank you. We are here to celebrate the recent victory of bringing trauma care to the South Side. Make no mistake, this is a huge victory. For the South Side, for victims of gun violence, for victims of other kinds of trauma. We applaud the University of Chicago, along with Sinai Health Systems, for doing the right thing. We also applaud the community members, the brave people of Fly, Coco, Stop, and She who persisted and hung in there week after week, month after month. They served as constant reminders to the University of Chicago to do the right thing. Please join me in a round of applause. throughout this time, we never lost sight of the fact that fearless leading by the youth and others had been fighting for access to emergency trauma care for this community for 5 years, spurred by the death of their friend Damien Turner. The University of Chicago is a great and respected institution. We are here today together to make sure that the university lives up to its own calling for greatness. We are here building a powerful organization to ally with others across Chicago, to call leaders and institutions to a higher ground, to urge them to make decisions not just based on money, but also based on lives. We are here to remind ourselves and our community and our city that we must strive to live up to our best selves. We've been talking to a lot of people in our community over the past several months. Some people wonder why there has been so much attention to the University of Chicago to step up. You will hear lots more about why over the next hour or so. We're going to try to keep this to another hour or so. Not everyone knows that the University of Chicago is the only top 20 medical school in the country without a level 1 trauma center. And many of those other schools are in distressed neighborhoods as well. Well, without a level 1 adult trauma center. So we express deep appreciation to the university for its funding and its role in the new trauma center at Holy Cross Hospital. And we want to make sure that the decision makers at the University of Chicago follow through on their commitments. This is a campaign of huge significance for trauma care and for racial justice in Chicago. And the speakers who follow me will explain why, along with what still needs to be in place. What is this campaign really about? It's about young Black lives, about those most affected by gun violence, and about community self-determination. It's about a city where in 2015, where you live and the color of your skin can still, 50 years after the civil rights movement, limit your future. And for a number of people, it's about life and death. I am proud to represent JCUA here on this bima as we join efforts with all of you to put forth our Jewish voice for trauma care on the South Side. Your presence here indicates that you've got something to say, that we are willing to speak out when something is simply not fair. We can have a big impact fighting inequality when we come together, unified, to live our Jewish values in partnership with Chicago's diverse communities. With JCUA's renewed spirit and focus, I would venture to say that we don't even know yet what's possible. Our membership is pursuing the answer to this, and that's a great way to connect with JCUA. So if you're not already a member, please join us. So thank you again for being here. In the words of Abraham Joshua Heschel, to pray with your feet. Together, we are stepping up to the plate as allies and neighbors and friends. I promise you your time here is well spent. Thank you.
They are getting this screen set up. I'm going to invite up onto the bima Alex Goldenberg, who is the director of STOP, Southside Together Organizing for Power. I'm not sure why that was funny.
Good afternoon. First, I just want to say it's an honor and a privilege to be here at this very important gathering in a sacred space. This story really begins with Damien Turner. He's a young man who was a dear friend of mine. It was with him in 2007 that we founded the youth organization Fearless Leading by the Youth, which was to be the youth arm of STOP, Southside Together Organizing for Power. Damien was a young man full of life. He was born and raised in Grove Park Plaza, a low-income housing development right on 60th and Cottage Grove. And he was somebody that just brought the whole community together. And he was the glue that really formed the base through which Fly was organized and through which young people came in The campaign was started when some of his friends were coming home from the juvenile detention center and reporting that there were inhumane conditions, that children were being mistreated. And so he founded a campaign to change that, to reform the criminal justice system. And 3 years later, after Fly had already started organizing and growing, on a hot summer night, he was tragically shot in a drive-by shooting. And he was driven 10 miles away past the University of Chicago, 3 blocks up to Northwestern, where he passed away. And his friends, in processing his passing, started asking, why is it that he was taken so far? And they found out that it was because there is no trauma center on the south side of Chicago. They learned that on the north side of Chicago, there are many trauma centers. In the predominantly white parts of the city, there is no issue of access to trauma care. They asked, why is it that it is on the south side? And immediately they understood this to be an issue of racial justice, of equity, and lack of resources. And so they decided to channel their anger and frustration and loss into honoring his legacy of fighting for justice, and so tried to change the conditions that led to his passing. And it was that reason that they founded this campaign to bring a trauma center to the south side. The campaign was launched on what would have been his 19th birthday, September 28th, 2010. Immediately when Fly learned that there was no trauma center, they started looking around to see who could provide one. And they started studying the different hospitals on the south side. And right away it became obvious that the University of Chicago was the only hospital with the resources to actually provide this care. All the other hospitals are poor community hospitals just struggling to survive. Whereas the University of Chicago has tremendous resources. They have a huge endowment. They bring in hundreds of millions of profits every year, even transfer some of those profits to subsidize university operations that go towards building dorms and other infrastructure for students. All that funded off of profits that come from patient care. So immediately it became obvious to them that the University of Chicago would have to play a major role in bringing this access to care. And so the campaign targeted the University of Chicago. And there were many actions that brought us to where we are today. It's been 5 years, and young people are incredibly creative and innovative. And so everything from petitions to door knocking to huge protests. We marched 10 miles to dramatize the distance that it takes to get to a trauma center. Countless sit-ins. And each action, we felt the need to escalate further and provide a very kind of in-your-face tactic, because we were being ignored. The University of Chicago was not responding, and when they did, they said they didn't have the money, or they said that it wasn't necessary. And this was a slap in the face to young people whose very lives, they were saying, had no value. And so that is why the campaign has escalated the way it has over the course of these 5 years, because it was the only way to get the attention of the University of Chicago. And in the close of 2014, we achieved our first sign that the university was actually listening and they could be moved. And they committed they would raise the age limit of their pediatric trauma center from 16 up to 18. And this had come after the young people had learned that many pediatric trauma centers around the country have the age limit of up to 21. Our young people, 14 and 15-year-olds, were calling around to trauma centers around the country asking them what the age limit is. It was through their research and persistence that this avenue became possible and that demand became realized. So after that commitment was won, we realized that we shouldn't slow down, but in fact we should escalate even further, because there was a chink in the armor of this institution, and there was a sign that they could actually be held accountable to their responsibility to provide care. And so throughout this past year, we continued our path of escalation, of in-your-face actions that have shown that they can in fact succeed. And in the summer, we finally received news that the University of Chicago was planning to put $40 million to open up a trauma center at Holy Cross. And while there's some ways you can look at it and say, so they paid $40 million to keep young black people away from their hospital, it seems horrible, right? But at the same time, it's a significant investment in these lives, and a sign that there is tremendous progress being made on this issue. This will provide access to some of the communities that need it the most. So Inglewood, Washington Park, West Woodlawn, Grand Crossing, some of these communities where there's tremendous gun violence and need are now going to be within 5 miles of a trauma center. And that's because of the work of young Black people on the South Side, which is amazing. And it wouldn't be possible without them. And some of these young people have been in this fight from the very beginning, so they've seen the fruits of their labor, which to me is an even greater victory, that they are going to be committed to this work for the rest of their lives because of this experience. So while we've come to this point, we are not satisfied, right? Because our goals are much longer. We have always been an organization fighting for structural change, for really undoing institutional and systemic racism in this country and in the world. And so until there's a human right for healthcare, we're not going to rest. And certainly while the southeast side of Chicago is still equally, distant from a trauma center, we definitely won't rest. So there's a lot more to be done. And our next speaker is going to tell us more about that. So thank you so much.
And our next speaker is Jawanza Malone, who is the Executive Director of COCO, Kenwood Oakland Community Organization.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Jawanza Malone, the Executive Director for the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization and a proud member of the Trauma Care Coalition. I want to just take a second to really thank you for being here. I want to thank the Jewish Council of Urban Affairs for putting this event together, Rabbi Reeves for hosting us in this beautiful synagogue. And while it may feel pretentious, please give yourselves a round of applause for being here. It is really, as Judy said, this is a momentous occasion. How often is it that we can come together to celebrate what young Black people are able to accomplish? To get a major institution like the University of Chicago to respond to their needs. I don't think that happens often. As someone who, at least I still consider myself relatively young anyway, I don't remember a time when I've seen that happen. As a young man from Maywood, Illinois, western suburb of here, who as a teenager got involved in some fights of my own, hey Mimi, related to budget cuts back in the 80s and struggling with institutions of power to create change and not seeing any victories. To go 40 years later and to see the work that Veronica and the young people at Fly are doing is an inspiration to me. And I would just ask that we applaud that one more time. So as Alex said, this is a celebration. The fact that there is at least a commitment to bring back trauma care to the South Side is something we should all celebrate. At the same time, there's still work that has to be done. While we know that commitments are something that we expect to come to fruition, there are instances when that just simply does not happen. And people can promise something and never truly expect to hold up to that promise. We do not want to see that happen here, and so that's why we're asking you here to get your help and make sure the university does what it says it's going to do. If you look at this map, before I continue, I really want to point out a couple of things. If you look at where the University of Chicago is situated, you look at the distance from there to Northwestern, you look at the distance from there to Holy Cross Hospital, you still see considerable distance. And when all of the research says that due to the advances in medical science, if a trauma surgeon has ample time to work on you, regardless of the injury. Now, understand, there may be some arrogance in the statement, but they have said, regardless of the injury, the chances for them to save that person's life increases drastically if it's within a 5-mile radius. If they have enough time to get to you, to work on you, to allow the expansive technology that's been developed to do its job. We are literally talking about the difference between life and death. And so there's still work that has to be done. To have an institution that says it's at the forefront of medicine and science, not do what it can to help its neighbors right here, I think it's appalling. I appreciate the commitment that's been made, the amount of resources that they said they're going to dedicate to shore up medicine in other parts of the city. We celebrate that and recognize it for the victory that it is. But when its neighbors are almost no better off as a result, there's something wrong with that. And so what we want to do is do a couple of things. We want to make sure that the university minimally keeps its promise to raise the age of this pediatric care unit. While it may not be a level 1 trauma center that we were fighting for, increasing the age would help those individuals who, let's be frank here, are often the ones who are victims of traumatic injuries. Every day in the news, we're hearing about children being struck down by a bullet. Oftentimes, it was not meant for them. Where did those innocent babies go to have their lives saved? And so being able to raise the age of the pediatric care unit will make a huge difference. We also want greater transparency and accountability. There has to be community voice in this process. What we've seen is what happens when institutions talk to each other without the community being involved. And mistakes are made over and over and over again. The fact that the university closed its trauma unit will set off a ripple effect across the city where other institutions began to close their trauma units. We see what happened as a result of that. And so it's not just that Chicago has a violence problem. I tend to think it's a public policy problem, but that's another subject. This violence problem is compounded by the fact that lives are being lost and innocent lives are being lost in the process. So there has to be community voice that's brought into this, is the point I want to make. Last but not least, we feel that there has to be a public plan for sustainability. What's going to happen after this initial investment is made? Will the university then just turn its back and walk away and say we've done what we could? Or is there a plan to sustain what's happening at Holy Cross and to potentially look at bringing other trauma centers to other parts of the South Side that are being under-resourced? Having community voice at the table, having your voices, your faces, your calls into the different offices taking place over the next several months will make a huge difference in making sure that that's able to happen. Just a quick story. I am with the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization. We're involved in a number of quality of life issues. One of the areas of work that we're engaged in is around affordable housing. We help to organize tenant councils and subsidized buildings. And those tenant councils are then empowered to negotiate on behalf of residents with the owners and management companies of these developments. In one such meeting, we were able to get a major management company to commit to a number of things. Chief among them was increased security. Their security presence in the development, but frankly, they just aren't doing their job. They sit in their office for 8 hours out of the day, and havoc is wreaked throughout the building. People who do not reside within the development come into the development, wreak havoc, create chaos, and intimidate the residents there. And security, who are being paid to be there to make the residents feel safe, were not doing their job. In the meeting, the residents were persistent and powerful in making their demand heard. The management company said they will commit to making sure that security was more responsive. And 2 weeks passed, 1 month passed, 2 months passed, and residents did not see any difference in what was happening. I called the representative from the management company and said, hey, you made this commitment when we met. And that person proceeded to tell me, verbatim, if you're going to hold me to commitments, I'm not going to continue to meet with your people. I swear this is a true story. And so I bring that story up just to make the point that people in powerful positions who do not feel beholden to everyday people can give lip service and never have any true intent to make a difference. With your help, we will be able to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Jawanza. That was very inspiring. Thank you very much. Now I want to welcome Michal David, a JCUA member, and also Rabbi Shoshana Conover, who's a rabbi at Temple Shalom, to the bima. And they're going to not hit that screen as they welcome.
So if you will, take a slight detour with me from the south side of Chicago to the south of our country, because late this summer I went to Columbia, South Carolina to be among the almost 200 rabbis who spent a day walking in America's journey for justice with the NAACP, which was a 40-day march from Selma, Alabama to Washington, D.C. under the banner, "Our lives, our votes, our jobs, and our schools matter." The purpose of this march was to mobilize activists to advance a focused national advocacy agenda that protects the right of every American to a fair criminal justice system, uncorrupted and unfettered access to the ballot box, sustainable jobs with a living wage, and equitable public education. I spent most of this march inspired and in awe. Inspired that Blacks and Jews were walking once again as allies in justice. In awe of the marchers determined to walk every inch of the journey. Inspired by the rabbis who brought their children to participate in this historic walk. And in awe of the sacrifices that so many of the staff of the NAACP made, leaving their families for weeks at a time to organize and participate in this walk. But no matter how awesome, no matter how inspiring, I did not go down there to have merely an inspiring experience. I went down there that day because I held on to the hope that I would continue this journey for justice with you, my Chicago Jewish community, when I returned.
Hello. So this legacy of social justice and allyship that Rabbi Conover just spoke about is exactly what brings me to this campaign and to this stage today. My involvement in the Trauma Center campaign began in January of this year when JCUA was inducted as a coalition member into the Trauma Center Coalition. Since its induction, JCUA has contributed to the efforts of the coalition in a variety of different ways, from phone banking to taking part in prayer vigils, to attending meetings with University of Chicago decision makers. JCUA has committed itself to serving as an ally in the movement for trauma care on the south side of Chicago. Today, I'm here to talk to you about two different coalition actions that for me hold particular significance in my own journey of becoming activated in this campaign. In April of this year, the coalition held an Interfaith Vigil in front of President Robert Zimmer's house to request the opening of an adult Level 1 trauma center at the University of Chicago. At this vigil, Southside community members gave testimonies about countless Black lives that were lost as a result of lack of access to trauma care on the South Side. Also, clergy from all different faiths spoke about striving for a world in which all lives are sanctified and valued. Up until this action and up until this point, I understood on an intellectual level that my activism around this issue was motivated by an ever-present desire to lirdof tzedek, or to pursue justice. However, for me, this moment was a stark reminder that lack of trauma care on the South Side is not only an issue of justice, but it's an issue of life and death. Ultimately, my commitment to this campaign is rooted in the core Jewish values of pikuach nefesh, the preservation of life. The second action that I'll talk to you about today occurred on June 3rd of this year, during which I, along with 8 other trauma center activists, was arrested for participating in an action in which we barricaded ourselves into the front lobby of the University of Chicago's administration building. The goal of this action was to procure a meeting with University President Robert Zimmer after 5 years of unfruitful attempts to do so. My decision to participate in this action was not an easy one, but it was ultimately motivated by my understandings of allyship and privilege. I am a white person living on the north side of the city who is actively involved in a campaign and in a cause that for the most part does not affect my day-to-day life. I am affected by the lack of a trauma center on the South Side only to the extent that it stirs my soul, by the fact that I believe that as long as there is injustice for any people in this world, we will all continue to live in a world shackled by the chains of injustice. Thus, my involvement in the Trauma Center campaign is ultimately a choice. The ability to make a choice about my involvement in this campaign is a privilege that for me ultimately comes with a feeling of responsibility. My involvement in the coalition action to barricade ourselves into the administration building solidified my belief that I, as a human, have the responsibility to step outside of my comfort zone and use my own power to support the efforts of those whose lives are directly affected by the lack of a trauma center on the South Side.
Michal, it is such an honor to share this microphone with you.
It's an honor too.
The actions that Michal described, the Interfaith Prayer Vigil and the sit-in the front lobby of the University of Chicago's administration building were met with some level of criticism, just as criticism surrounded some actions in the civil rights movement. In the case of the University of Chicago, we realize that we are helping this institution live out its stated values and objectives. We are then able to understand that change is often motivated by action that requires a certain level of disruption of a system which perpetuates, knowingly or unknowingly, injustice. Let me say that again because it's very important. We understand that change is often motivated by action that requires a certain level of disruption of a system which perpetuates, either knowingly or unknowingly, perpetuates injustice. So as we join as allies with coalition activists on the South Side, we affirm as Jews that we will work tirelessly so that our city's policies, its institutions, and access to comprehensive trauma care on the South Side ensure and affirm that Black lives matter.
So, as Rabbi Shoshana stated, we are ultimately allies in this campaign. As you've heard from Alex today, this campaign was started over 5 years ago by a group of youth who identified an issue in their community and rose up to think about a solution to that issue. And while JCUA holds a particular strategic role in this coalition, ultimately, JCUA has the responsibility to hold itself and its work accountable to the values, desires, visions, and efforts of those in the coalition who are directly affected by the lack of a trauma center on the South Side. Thus, I stand here today in recognition of the tireless, and let me say that again, tireless work of Black youth on the South Side who have over the last 5 years demanded their right to life. I stand here today with immense admiration of coalition activists who every single day inspire me and teach me about what it means to put your time, your body, and your mind on the line in the pursuit of justice. And I'm now going to turn over the mic back to Rabbi Reeves to introduce one of the most fearless and inspirational activists and humans that I have ever met and have had the privilege of getting to know over the last year. Thank you.
Oh, you should say that.
I'm now officially introducing Veronica Morris-Moore from Fearless Leading by the Youth.
After we sat in jail 2 days after that, actually. And I'm very grateful for that. And I'm also very grateful to have gotten to know Danny and Marla and Judy and the rest of the JCUA team and Sarah, everybody. I got to know you guys so well working with JCUA. And I would like to say that it has been a pleasure to work with JCUA. And so thank you guys for putting this event together and for always being the most perfect example of what allies look like. I'm sorry, Rabbi Reeves, I'm breaking stuff. Okay, so, so my part and piece to bring to this beautiful presentation that you guys have seen today, right? We've heard Alice talk about the history and how the campaign got started, and we heard Jawanta talk about the type of relationship that the South Side has with the University of Chicago. And we also heard very beautifully why this is a social justice and racial justice issue. But I think what is missing and what I'm here to provide is the reality of the situation. I came to this work as a young person in my senior year of high school at 18 years old. I didn't know Damien. I met him very briefly before he passed. The way that I met Damien was by being introduced to STOP, which was basically my introduction to organizing, period, and going with them to the U.S. Social Forum in Detroit. And that's also how I was introduced to this work. And how I found my calling as an organizer. And what I understood about STOP and organizing, and that all of it is about getting to the root of the problem, and as Alex said, creating some type of structural change to then fix or get rid of that problem. And so for me, the reason why the Trauma Center campaign is not just a fundamental campaign for all the reasons that we talked about, right? The right to life and healthcare for everyone, and racial justice and all those things as such. But in my own life, I have been around subject to gun violence ever since I was a small child. I grew up in South Shore. I still live in South Shore. I've also lived in many different neighborhoods on the South Side. And the reality of people being shot and young people dying is so real. In my own personal life, my senior high school, when I was introduced to organizing, 2 classmates that I had were just shot. One killed by the police, one killed during what folks said was a simple dice game going on. And it happens every day in our neighborhoods. And the reality for us as young Black people is real. So beyond believing in the Trauma Center campaign and believing the fact that if Damien could have went to the University of Chicago, we know probably enough young people to fill up this entire church that could have went to, I'm sorry, the synagogue. Sorry, I'm used to the church. My family is Baptist and Christian. But beyond all of that, we know these young people who could have had that same opportunity, who probably could have survived that same fate. And so for me, even though I do this work because it is a passion of mine, it is also because I am living in the realities of institutional racism and what that means. And for me, it's not just an intellectual conversation, it's a real life, everyday conversation. And so as we talk about organizing and we talk about what are the ways, right, that we realize justice in our lifetime and ways that our children can realize justice in their lifetime, continuing to push this issue into a larger conversation, but also continuing the work behind this issue, the work of chaining ourselves together and throwing our bodies into the system so that business as usual can take a back seat to what people really need, which is a difference. And a difference that is shaped by the people who are looking for things to change. And so with all of that, right, I stand here in front of you guys asking that if you are not a member of JCUA, that you become a member of JCUA. If you are not a member of any organization, a social justice organization, that you find one. If you're a young Black person, Fly is always looking for members. If you know other youth organizations, there are organizations all over this city, and there's a growing movement in this city. I was a part of the action around the IACP conference that was here last Saturday. And that work is so crucial because, and I can't remember the exact quote in the name, and I'll leave you guys with this, but there is someone who says that the way that we use our power is by throwing our bodies into the machine. And that is how we change things. And so, for me, I ask that you guys join us in throwing our bodies into the machine and doing what is necessary for people who are suffering from gun violence. Because it is the institutional racism that we see through our politics, through our government, through our country, that creates the type of violence that I've had to live with my whole entire life. And so please join me in throwing your body into the machine and join JCUA in supporting young Black leadership. Thank you.
As we prepare now for the El Mole Rachamim prayer, and we welcome Cantor Vicky Glicken to our Bima, the Cantor of Congregation Solal. Call to mind the function of this prayer. It is through this prayer that we ascribe mercy and compassion to God on the one hand, but also remember those individuals that we have lost. Damien Turner first among them, but also all those who have perished as a result of being too far away from a trauma center. As we remember them, we pray for the day when distance to a trauma center is not a factor in who lives and who dies.
Please rise.
Oh perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, who shine like the glow of the firmament to the souls of our brothers and sisters who were killed and slaughtered. Because all of the house of Israel unite in their holy memory and pray for their souls to ascend, may their resting place be in the Garden of Eden. Therefore, Master of Mercy, may they always be sheltered in God's protecting care. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. Let the earth not cover their blood. May they rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. Amen.
For any rabbi, it is a great honor when clergy colleagues, cantors, and rabbis come to your synagogue. It has been my honor to share this bima so far with Rabbi Wolkenfeld, with Rabbi Conover, with Cantor Glicken. But it is my great honor now to introduce Rabbi Capers Fanei, the board president of JCUA, and the Rabbi of Beth Shalom B'nai Zaken Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation. I am so honored.
This is really wonderful. Shalom Aleichem. We're here today to celebrate a victory with all of those organizations that labored for 5 years to see a level 1 trauma center for residents of the South Side of Chicago. Our sacred text speaks to us during the holiest season of the year for Jews, the period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, on Yom Kippur it is sealed. Who shall live and who shall die? Who by fire and who by water? Who in their time and who not? Who will be protected and who will be vulnerable? Who will be near treatment and whose chances will be slim? On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed. But repentance, worship, and acts of justice can overturn the harshness of the decree. For trauma care on the South Side, we can take action today to inscribe for ourselves how people will live and die on Chicago's South Side. This statement reads, as leaders from across the Chicago Jewish community, we call on the University of Chicago to follow through on its stated commitments to expand trauma care on the South Side, including opening a level 1 adult trauma center at Holy Cross Hospital and raising the age for admitting patients at Coma Pediatric Trauma Center. To this end, the university must ensure transparency and accountability by taking a lead role in organizing regional trauma with representatives for the Trauma Care Coalition being at the table, because Black lives do matter. So I ask together, those, my colleagues that are here, let us sign this document and let us pursue justice for Southside communities. I ask for the Jewish clergy that are present today, that are in favor of this letter, if you would please to join me on the bima. This statement that we are signing will be delivered to President Zimmer and to Dean Polanski. So I am signing today on behalf of our congregation and our organization, the Jewish Council on Urban Affairs.
My name is Fred Reeves. I'm the rabbi of KM Isaiah Israel, and I call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
I'm Debbie Lewis. I'm the ritual director of Untitled Synagogue, and we call for comprehensive care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Shoshana Conover. I'm from Temple Sholem of Chicago, and I call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Vicki Glicken. I'm the cantor at Congregation Solel in Highland Park, and I call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Edwin Goldberg. I'm a rabbi at Temple Sholem of Chicago in Lakeview, and I call for comprehensive trauma care here on the south side of Chicago.
I'm Rabbi Rachel Mikva at Chicago Theological Seminary and the Center for Jewish, Christian, and Islamic Studies, and we call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
Rabbi Michael Zedek, Emmanuel Congregation on the north side, calling for trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Andrea London, Rabbi at Bethlehem at the Free Synagogue in Evanston, Illinois, and we call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Lizzie Heidemann. I'm the rabbi at Mishkan, Chicago, and all of us that are here and all of us that are not here call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is David Walkenfeld from Anshe Shalom B'nai Israel congregation. I'm honored to join all of my colleagues, all of my friends in calling for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Brandon Bernstein. I'm the campus rabbi at Northwestern Hillel, and I, along with the Northwestern students who are here today, call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
Jeremy Weisblatt, one of the rabbis at Temple Sholem, and honored to join my colleagues here calling for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Isaac Serrata from Lakeside Congregation for Reformed Judaism in Highland Park, Illinois, and I'm honored to be here with everyone, all of you, to call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
My name is Bruce Elder from Congregation Hakafa, and I too call for comprehensive trauma care on the south side of Chicago.
And so may it be noted that the following rabbis have signed in abstention: Rabbi Dor Khan Gold, Rabbi Cindy Inger, Rabbi Amanda Green, Rabbi Seth Limmer, Rabbi David Russo, and Rabbi Max Weiss. To all of you, thank you so very much.
While the rabbis assemble for a picture, I'd like to ask you once more to boost them up by joining me in a round of applause.
Is going to lead us in the Shechianu blessing.
I begin every one of the tutoring sessions with my students with what I call a Shechianu moment. And I insist that they tell me something that happened that day that they would consider a blessing, because I want them to begin to develop an attitude of gratitude and to see the blessings that surround them each and every day. And I suspect if I asked each of you right now, what was your Shechianu moment for today? This would be it. And so I'm very honored to be able to lead us in this blessing, which thanks God for bringing us to this day, for keeping us in life, and for allowing us to experience this very holy moment. So I ask you to please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
picked up one of the agendas as you came in, you will see that we have one speaker who remains, and I know we had good speakers, so I don't know that I can so strongly say we saved necessarily the best for last, but we saved a really good one for last, I can certainly say. Yeah. So I'm delighted to welcome Arya Bernstein at JCUA.
Shalom. My name is Arya Bernstein. I'm a Hyde Parker. I live in the trauma care desert. I also am a proud member of JCUA and honored to be here today in KM Isaiah Israel, a longtime beacon of Jewish social responsibility in Chicago, on the South Side, and nationally. Today we have borne witness as our rabbis and cantors took a bold step forward for trauma care. Well, what can the rest of us do? We joined with Cantor Glicken and Rabbi Fournier and with Debbie Lewis in prayer. In classical, traditional Jewish prayer, every day we ask for healing. Every day we ask for assistance in changing our ways and doing better at the ways of divine intimacy and empathy. And every day we ask for forgiveness. I say these blessings every day, along with many Jews around the world. What do I mean when I say them? What do we mean when we say them? Our sages in the Talmud tell us that no less than the brave prophets Jeremiah and Daniel changed the words of prayer, removed certain words from the prayer, when life circumstances rendered them unable to say Moses' words honestly. Because the Holy One is a God of truth, and we may not speak dishonestly in prayer. The sages also teach us that the Holy One meets us when we begin the journey. That if we take sincere steps of repentance, of self-improvement, we are lifted up the rest of the way. Does God hear our prayers for healing and look at the world of hospitals and doctors and urban planning and say, no, if you want healing so much, get started. You want help acting as your best selves? Get started, and I'll lend you a hand. What can we do to live lives worthy of prayer? You all have these cards. Does everybody have them? Wave them in the air, wave them like you just don't care. Okay, you have these cards. First, we can show our rabbis and our cantors that we have their back, that they represent a strong community. Ushers are distributing pens around if you need them, and we ask you, sign. Join our rabbis and cantors in signing this card. On Thursday, November the 5th, a delegation of us from JCUA will deliver this letter from our clergy to the administration of the University of Chicago, and we will deliver these cards as well. So they know that it's not just the clerical leadership, but the rank and file of the Chicago Jewish community. Please sign. Second, if you would like to join our delegation in delivering these letters this Thursday, check the box, and we would love to have you. Third, as Veronica gave the best plug for this possible, join JCUA. Seriously, the campaign is dynamic, and the coalition, including JCUA, decides on strategy and actions as appropriate to changing conditions. So we don't know exactly what the next 2 steps are going to be weeks from now. It depends on what's happening. Join JCUA and you will be kept abreast of developments in this and other important campaigns for social justice and next steps you can take within the Jewish community. Fourth, learn more about our heroic community partners. The Kenwood Organizing Community Council, the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, COCO, fearlessly leading by the youth, Fly, STOP, the other coalition partners. Our speakers, as well as JCUA staff and volunteers, are happy to stay after this program and discuss your questions with you out in the lobby by the refreshments. And you'll be able to hand in your cards on your way out so that we can deliver these for you. I'll conclude with a prayer I composed for an Interfaith Trauma Center vigil some months ago and ask for your help, for all of our help, in making us all worthy of this prayer. Creator of the universe, healer of shattered hearts, who bestows knowledge to human beings, teaching insights to mortals. Grant your knowledge, insight, and discernment to us who seek care for the vulnerable and to those able to provide that care. Return us to your ways, for we are stiff-necked people. Open the gates of repentance, that we may all return to you in full repentance, that we may open the gates of our conscience to those in distress, that the caregivers open their gates to those who knock in distress. Forgive us, our parents, for we have sinned. Pardon us, our ruler, for the sins we have committed before you by trapping our neighbor and through a begrudging eye, the sarut ayin, with diatarea. For you are one who pardons and forgives. Heal us, Adonai, that we may be healed, healing of the soul to those wounded by complacency, whose hearts are sealed shut, and healing of the body to those wounded by the sword, with hearts ripped open. Hear our voices, Adonai, and may the cries of the distressed rise up to you. For you, Adonai, listen to prayers and petitions. Praised are you who listens to prayer. Baruch atah shomea tefillah. Amen.
As we depart this afternoon, I again want to thank everyone at the JCUA, Judy Levy, of course, but Danny Kaplan and Marla Bramble as well for all of their hard work. I want to thank each and every one of our speakers for their inspiring words and their inspiring actions. I want to thank all of you who are present here today, and thank you for the actions that you will take in the future. I also want to thank Rabbi Lizzie Heidemann and the Mishkan Davening team for the music that we had before our program, and they're going to give us a little concluding walking music as well. As we were blessed to come together here today to learn, to be inspired, and to be called to action, so too may we be blessed as we return to the remainder of our lives. May the commitments that we have made this day be ones that stay with us. May we work together for an adult level 1 trauma center on the south side, certainly, but also for the day when justice will flow down like waters and righteousness as a mighty stream, so that meetings like this one will no longer be necessary, because we will already have recognized the humanity of all of the residents of our city, our country, and our world. May this be God's will. And this does conclude the official portion of this afternoon's program.